to my channel today. It's such a pleasure to have you all back. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I am so blessed to be a part of this new year, and it's a pleasure to have you all. I appreciate every one of you for subscribing, for sharing, telling someone to tell someone to tell someone. So guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Ada, your online therapist in the making. So do not be shy to click the share button. Invite your loved ones who need to know a thing or two about how the brain works and its quirks and it's amazing stuff. Okay, today's topic, I would like to still continue on applied behavior analysis, and I'm going to be talking about one of the most famous topics, which is punishment. Okay, punishment. It is something that is so dear to the hearts and the minds of Black parents worldwide. It's a culture thing, right? So what have you heard? What do you know about punishment? What in the world is a punishment? This is a consequence. Remember when I talked about consequences are things that happen immediately after a behavior, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whether it reinforces the behavior or it decreases the likelihood of that behavior in the future. All right, so punishment is such a consequence that is intended to decrease the likelihood of a behavior from occurring in the future. Are there negatives or what we call pros and cons? Well, to an African parent, a punishment is the most reliable sidekick in child training. I beg to differ, if you will. So guys, what is it about punishment that makes it so different culturally? Here in America, spanking a child is not acceptable form. It's not an acceptable form of punishment. And you could get in trouble, and it's easily digresses, or it easily becomes abuse. It is seen as abuse. It is not an acceptable form of reinforcement, whether negative or positive. Reinforcement wants to increase a behavior. Punishment wants to decrease a behavior. They are both consequences. There are positive, just like positive and negative reinforcements. There are positive and negative punishments. Just like positive reinforcement adds something pleasant, and negative reinforcement removes something unpleasant. Positive punishment adds something unpleasant, and negative punishments remove something that's pleasant. So I'm going to be talking all about this, so hang around and I will see you as we progress. Positive simply adds. When you hear positive, whether it's just like reinforcement, when you hear positive, it means to add. When you hear negative, it means to remove. Now it's a question of what are you adding and what are you removing. Okay, when it's a punishment, you are adding something unpleasant. And when it's a reinforcement, you are adding something pleasant. Now for the negatives, when it's punishment, you are removing what is pleasant. And when it's a reinforcement, you are removing something unpleasant. Remember, reinforcement wants to increase the behavior, a desired behavior, and punishment wants to decrease an undesirable behavior. Okay, now punishment has a lot of flack in civilized worlds because of the studies like applied behavior, where we study behavior to modify behavior, without having to traumatize a human being for the rest of their lives. And I'm sorry, but a lot of Africans are traumatized. Okay? Given they're very awesome parents like mine, why does punishment have such a bad reputation? Well, it can actually increase the behavior you are trying to stop, where parents simply say the child is stubborn or incorrigible. Okay. Second of all, it evokes an emotional response where the children, especially from 0 ages to 7, when they do something wrong and you have a negative reaction, simply think they're bad people, they don't deserve to be loved, and that's why you're hurting them. Oftentimes you would see children cry hysterically because for them, everything is in extremes. They think they have offended you, they think they're gonna die, they think they're a bad person, they think they don't deserve your love because you are punishing them. If you love them, you would not be punishing them. And The third thing is um, they could become aggressive. The respondents, the operants, what we call, they could become aggressive. A lot of times when you punish, you have a rebellious response from the operant, and that could get out of hand where they're fighting, you're fighting, and suddenly it's unequal energies or power in a power struggle. I mean, a parent fighting with a toddler, it can get misread, is the likelihood that you will disdain the person. How many students disdain their high school teachers, boarding school matrons and patrons, whatever the case may be, principals, type strong fisted principals? How many kids, especially African kids, dislike their teachers back in elementary or high school? I mean, nobody gets beaten. And that's why it's almost like in university, these kids that have been punished or suffered some sort of punishment on a constant basis in excuse me, in their high school or elementary school, suddenly become these rebellious members of society, because like now they're finally free. They don't have to take any of that anymore, so there's a likelihood that they can become aggressive and rebellious and increase in rebellion and aggression. It can also cause depression. Yes, there is sometimes the punishment does not equal the crime, just because as humans, parents especially tend to transfer aggression and frustration to children, when in fact the what's it called, the source of our frustration is something other than what the child has done. What the child has done simply triggers us, and we have a response to that, but unfortunately it is being meted out to an unqualified target. It's not a fair, if you understand what I'm trying to say. You suffer frustration from work, you have episodes of suppressed anger, insults, and all that stuff, and then a child does something, and it's like you have had enough. You are so there's a real likelihood that when parents take out their issues, their adult issues on children, they call it punishment, but it's not really what's happening. It can lead to depression in a child because it's like they think they're responsible. Like when parents blame kids for divorce, blame parents, some mothers blame their daughters that they're raped, and punish them even more, beat them for seducing her boyfriend or husband. Crazy stuff you hear from silly people, and it can lead to depression because children on their own are still trying to form their independence, and they're developing in their adulthood. So it can really change the course of a budding adult into a depressed adult, a rebellious adult, a psychopathic adult, psychotic at some point. So it goes awry and really fast. Things can really escalate in a negative sense when it comes to punishment, because you are meting unkindness to another human being, and there's never really an excuse for that. It can. One thing about a punishment is there's certain very clever children. Behavior returns when punishment stops, and you see yourself being frustrated. A lot of mothers with boys seem to have this issue where he never stops. I beat him, I beat him, I beat him. I hit him with everything I've got. He never stops. He just stops when I'm hitting him, and when I stop, he gets right back to it. And last but not least, it can lead to abuse. We've talked about abuse. We've talked about a thin line between punishment, being effective, and it degenerating to abuse, where an adult is simply offloading their emotional stress or problems on somebody that is not able to defend themselves, because a punishment is effective when there is no, how do I put it? When you can't defend yourself, that's when it's effective. If you can, you simply walk away from the situation. So I'm going to talk about abuse. Why is abuse and punishment being mentioned often and on? And stick around, and I will get to that in a minute. So, guys, don't forget to subscribe, share if you will, and do like and leave your comments below. I'd like to know how this channel has helped you and how the topic in particular has been useful in your daily life. All right, so let's get into it. What is the link between abuse and punishment? Without due pleasure. I've been talking about the connections between abuse and punishment. So, what is abuse? I've got a whole text on it, okay? So, abuse can be insult to someone, to speak in an insulting or offensive way to someone. Oftentimes, parents go, "You big head, you idiot, you know." Things that kids would get in fight with their peers, parents usually speak in this manner to them, and it's like they can't do anything because it's their parent, but it's still an abuse and a denigration of their human dignity. The second one says, treat a person with cruelty or violence, especially repeatedly and regularly. So, again, in a family setting, punishments will occur repeatedly, if not regularly, especially if such a child is seen as stubborn, unrelenting, and incorrigible. So there is bound to be a repeat of punishments, which can lead to abuse. Okay? It can turn to abuse. I mean, there are kids who hide their, what they call it, when they get beaten, there's a word for it, whapping or whap, something, not smacking, there's a word for it when you're zapped, I think. So you see a lot of kids who are actually abused by their parents, such as drug addict parents or parents with anger issues. When these kids are abused, they have to wear long sleeves to cover up the abuse. So because it's repeated, whenever they fall out, they get abused. The third one is to inflict physical or emotional mistreatment or injury purposely or through negligence or neglect on a regular basis. So you can see why in this country it's forbidding and very illegal to spank a child. Well, to beat, let me call it to beat, is considered abuse. And this country takes individuality and the development of a well-rounded adult as very high priority because the country is built on capitalism, and capitalism thrives on individualism, guys. Okay, so I have shown and spoken about what makes punishment very likely to become abuse, and why abuse in itself is a terrible thing. And you've heard about domestic abuse, you've heard about parental abuse, you've heard about spousal abuse, you've heard about work harassment and abuse in so many ways. You've heard about clergy abuse. Abuse is a very terrible thing we do not want to expose any of our loved ones to, especially minors. Okay. You want to protect, take shelter, get away from the abusive or toxic environment. And it's difficult when kids live in low and high risk neighborhoods, if that's a thing. So basically, guys, I'm talking about punishment, and I know it's like a long standing practice, but punishment needs to be phased out into a more dialogue, a more behavior modifying system. So you can see how it's very highly valued. And ABAB, which is an applied behavior analyst, is well paid in the health sector. They are considered health workers or para-health, I believe, or something like that. So, okay. So thank you so much for listening. I do hope you would reconsider the options available. Like I've discussed, don't forget there's an antecedent, what happens before the behavior, there's the behavior, and then there's the consequence. And you want to shape consequences so that it either increases or decreases hopefully the behavior. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in my next video. Don't forget, every Tuesday I'm here as faithful as I can be to this cause, to educating everyone on the African continent, especially, but everyone around the world, on a better way to live your normal life, your daily life, with improved understanding about how the brain functions, so we can stop knocking on wood or having no results. Okay, so I hope these little nuggets are helpful in how you relate with your little ones, your minors, and people around you. We'll see you in my next video. Thank you so much.